AskReddit. Reddit, what is the most mind-boggling fact you know? Part 1. In World War II, a Hungarian mathematician named Abraham Wald developed a continuative method for armor plate placement while studying damaged aircraft. He observed planes returning home from sorties with large holes in them and was tasked with figuring out where to put armor plates. His crucial insight was to not put armor plates where the holes were. The holes in the aircraft that returned represented damage that did not impact the ability of the planes to return home. In other words, he made the critical observation of the bias in the data he was observing. He was only looking at planes that survived. With this knowledge, he instructed armor to be placed in areas that were not damaged, because if these areas were hit, there would be no damage in that component in the planes that returned home. This is true and helped to identify a logical fallacy called survivorship bias. The inscription on the One Ring from Lord of the Rings is not actually Elvish, which quite a few people mistake it to be, but an entirely different language that Tolkien created called the Black Speech of Mordor, or Orsich. Tolkien had stated that he came up with the Black Sheep speech by thinking of the most horrible things in his life. In particular, his experiences from World War I, which is why when you hear the Black Speech, such as when Sauron speaks it in LOTR and The Hobbit, it sounds like a dialect sent straight from hell. He grew up to be disgusted by the language he created so much that when a fan sent him a wine goblet with the One Ring's inscription on it as a gift, he used it as an ashtray. The Elvish confusing comes in because of the inscription of the One Ring is Black Speech written in Elvish script, like Chinese being written using English characters, for example. All of the solid objects around me are actually vibrating. Each atom exists of a nucleus that basically equates to a flea in the largest stadium that you can think of. Those objects you perceive are not actually solid, but rather fields, kind of like those created by a magnet. Saudi Arabia imports sand and camels from Australia. Why sand though? Apparently it's better quality. I'm more confused by the camels. Camels are a common, somewhat delicate, I think. I've had some guy say it to me once, don't know how true that is. Food in Saudi Arabia, and apparently Australia is the largest producer abroad. By the way, Australia has the largest feral camel population, which grows fast, 8% per year, and is the target of containment policies by the government. Senator Daniel Inouye literally lived out every overdone action movie trope. Inouye was promoted to sergeant within his first year, and he was assigned as a platoon sergeant. He served in Italy in 1944 during the Rome-Arno campaign before his regiment was transferred to the Vosges Mountains region of France, where he spent 2 weeks in the battle to relive the Lost Battalion, a battalion of the 141st Infantry Regiment that was surrounded by the German forces. He was promoted to second lieutenant for his actions there. At one point, while he was leading an attack, a shot struck him in the chest directly above his heart, but the bullet was stopped by $2 silver he'd happened to have stacked in his shirt pocket. He continued to carry those coins throughout the war in his shirt pocket as good luck charms, until he lost them shortly before the battle, in which he lost his arm. On April 21, 1945, Inouye was grievously wounded while leading an assault on a heavily defended ridge near San Lorenzo in Tuscany, Italy, called the Colle Masatello. The ridge served as a strong point of the German fortifications known as the Gothic Line, the last and most unyielding line of German defensive works in Italy. As he led his platoon in a flanking maneuver, 3 German machine guns opened fire from covered positions 40 yards away, pinning his men to the ground. Inouye stood up to attack and was shot in the stomach. Ignoring his wound, he proceeded to attack and destroy the first machine gun nest with hand grenades and his Thompson submachine gun. When informed of the severity of his wound, he refused treatment and rallied his men for an attack on the second machine gun position, which he successfully destroyed before collapsing from blood loss. As his squad distracted the third machine gunner, Inouye crawled toward the final bunker, coming within 10 yards. As he raised himself up and cocked his arm to throw his last grenade, a German soldier inside the bunker fired a rifle grenade, which struck his right elbow, nearly severing most of his arm and leaving his primed grenade reflectively clenched in a fist that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. Inouye's horrified soldiers moved to his aid, but he shouted for them to keep back out of fear for his severed fist would involuntarily relax and drop the grenade. While the German inside the bunker reloaded his rifle, Inouye pried the live grenade from his useless right hand and transferred it to his left. As the enemy soldier aimed his rifle at him, Inouye tossed the grenade into the bunker and destroyed it. He stumbled to his feet and continued forward, silencing the last German resistance with a one-handed burst from his Thompson before being wounded in the leg and tumbling unconscious to the bottom of the ridge. He awoke to see the worried men of his platoon hovering over him. His only comment before being carried away was to order them back to their positions, saying, "Nobody called off the war." The remainder of Inouye's mutilated arm was later amputated at a field hospital without proper anesthesia, as he had been given too much morphine at an aid station, and it was feared any more would lower his blood pressure enough to kill him. This all from a first-generation Japanese American that enlisted into a segregated division only after the U.S. lifted the ban of the Japanese serving in the military. Hawaii is very proud of him. One of the main highways on my island is named after him. 43% of all people born prior to the 1800s died before the age of 5. This one annoys me because some people don't take it into consideration when talking about how life expectancy back then was around 30 or 40. People didn't die of old age at 40. A lot of people just died before their 20s, and that brought the average right down. Cicadas live underground for several years and emerge only to reproduce. The number of years they take to come above ground is mostly a prime number. Each species has its own prime number of years they stay underground. The reason to be a prime number is that it reduces drastically the chance of two different species meeting above ground in the same year and crossbreed, weakening the genes of both species. Just a few years ago in Kansas, we had a 17-year species and a 13-year come out at the same time. The noise was tremendous at night. My BIL from Oregon came to visit, and the sound really scared him. Indiana legislatures tried to legally define pi as 3.2 and almost succeeded. Barring how stupid that is, why 3.2 instead of 3.1, which would be the proper rounded number with 2 digits? We aren't real smart around here. In the mid-1880s, aluminum was more valuable than gold. Now we use it expandedly to wrap food. Fun side fact, it was used to cap the top of the Washington Monument due to its initial value at the time. Also, it is immune to the effects of allonomacy. North American area codes were originally assigned based on population size and the ease of dialing on a rotary phone. 212 went to New York, fastest dial time possible for the most phoned area. 312 for Chicago. Alaska got 907. Mind you, this was when only 1 or 0 could be the middle digit in an area code. If you add up your area code with 0 being 10, you get a numerical ranking of your city-state's relative importance, if you will. This is no longer true, as any 3 numbers can be used for an area code, so these original area codes, like rotary phones, are a relic of the past. Olympus Mons on Mars, the tallest known mountain in the solar system, is so large at its base that an observer on its peak wouldn't know he was standing on a mountain because its slope would be obscured by the curvature of the planet itself. It's so tall that it has a 5-mile-high sheer cliffs at its base. Imagine looking at a solid wall that's roughly the height of Mount Everest, and that's just at the bottom. It gives me shivers up my spine thinking about that. We need to colonize Mars just so we can watch somebody climb it. The placebo effect can still happen when you know you're taking a placebo. If you believe that placebo effect is some kind of magical phenomenon that will happen no matter what, it will happen no matter what. So in a way, you experience placebo. That if sound waves could travel through space, the sun burning would sound as loud as a chainsaw at about 10 meters. You might be interested to know that NASA put out a collection entitled Symphonies of the Planets, in which they used electromagnetic recordings from Voyagers 1 and 2 to create each track. Granted, what you're hearing is a downsampling of electromagnetic waves that are normally well outside our ability to hear, but it's still really awesome. There is a microscopic organism called tardigrade, also water bear, which can survive extreme environments, including the vacuum of space, by dehydrating its body and basically putting itself into stasis. Then, when conditions improve, it absorbs some water and goes back to doing whatever it does. They have been sent into space and not only survived, they multiplied. However, they did not multiply in space. After returning to Earth and being rehydrated, they had laid eggs that successfully hatched. It's important to note that the vacuum of space didn't do anything to them, but the ultraviolet radiation from the sun caused damage to the subjects not shielded from the sun's UV rays. Male Irish mummies are often found with nipple mutilations, leading many experts to believe Irish leaders may have worn nipple rings, as kissing a king's nipple was believed to be a sign of respect. A supernova seen from distance the sun is to the Earth will be brighter, in terms of energy delivered to your retina, than a hydro bomb pressed against your eyeball, by 9 orders of magnitude. For those who don't know, 9 orders of magnitude aren't 9 times the brightness, it's 1 billion times the brightness. We could assign an IPv6 address to every atom on the surface of the Earth.